In Chapter 5, we jump ahead a pretty good amount of time to Geralt on a barge traveling the coast of Redania to Temeria, serving as an escort for any possible aquatic monsters that they may run into along the way. He passed the time by reading a letter from Ciri, telling us that he is obviously parted with her, and she now resides with Neneke at the Temple of Melatile. There, she's studying things like Geralt before her in the ways of language, writing, rhetoric, things that literate people like you and I take for granted. Geralt also has a letter from Yennefer, informing him that she would be leaving soon, implying that sometime that the book didn't specify that Geralt did actually reach out to Yen, like Triss advised. Geralt chit-chats with an Oxenford scholar, as well as the ship's skipper, before being approached by a group of Redanian customs officers, being led by Geralt's acquaintance, Olsen. Between them all, they form a little circle and pass around vodka and begin discussing the economic state of the Northern Realms, which, much like the politics, is interesting, but for another time. Before long, the group notices a Temerian ship en route to intercept them. It's at this time that Olsen tells Geralt that through the grapevine, he was being searched for by one Rience, the mage who tortured Dandelion. Geralt, hearing this, destroyed the letters from Ciri and Yen, and prepared for the confrontation. The Temerians board the ship and quickly began asking questions about where Geralt was and demanded the location of the girl that was traveling alongside him. Olsen makes an effort to lie and hide Geralt, but actually Geralt comes forward anyway and allows himself to be arrested by who now the Redanians perceive not to actually be Temerian soldiers, even going so far as to threaten a child's life if Geralt wouldn't go with them. Amidst the chaos of the situation, two giant praying mantis-like claws erupt from the water between the two ships. The ships become under siege by a pretty rare monster called an Everetia, a giant crustacean scorpion-typed monster that the scholar from Oxenford was trying to convince Geralt wasn't even real just an hour before. All chaos breaks loose, both sides killing each other, all the while trying to kill the monster. After yet another pretty intense battle, but this one was much less tragic as the only lives lost were on the side of the Temerians, which isn't to say that any loss of life isn't tragic, but these were some pretty villainous men. The monster ends up retreating from the battle, and closing out the events, the man who threatened to kill the child if Geralt wouldn't go with them is trying to swim away from the confrontation, but is killed by one of the creatures, ending the events on the barge. From here, we're slingshotted all the way to the university city of Oxenford, and we're reunited with Dandelion. He's traveling to the center of the university, but he finds that he is being tailed by two men, which interferes with his ambitions. However, he finds a familiar face amongst the crowd of students in Oxenford, the medical student, Shani. The two exchange a few pleasantries, but Dandelion immediately makes a request from the young student. He tells her that he needs her to deliver a message, and given the fact that she gets excited when she hears the word Witcher, we can assume that this is Geralt. She agrees to deliver the message for him, and the two of them part ways. It's after they part ways that the goons that were tailing Dandelion kind of corner him and tell him greetings from Dijkstra. Dandelion, not being much of a fighter, agrees to go with the men to see Dijkstra, who wishes to speak with him. Now, just a quick description of Dijkstra for those of you who don't know him. This is what he looks like, and he is a spy in the service of King Vizimir, ruler of Redania, before the reign of Radovid. At Dijkstra's side, we find the sorceress Philippa, the court wizard of King Vizimir, and a respected mage with the Lodge of Sorceresses. The information they wish to obtain from Dandelion is that which seems to be on many people's minds. Where's Geralt, and where's Ciri? They claim that they only wish to talk to Geralt, as they only have his and Ciri's safety in mind, because it's become well known that they were also being sought out by Rience. This, however, didn't worry Geralt. In fact, the whole reason we learn why he got the job on the barge in the first place was to draw Rience to him in a trap, but that resulted in the Temerians trying to apprehend him. Despite Dijkstra and Philippa's best efforts, they sensed that they were getting nowhere, and they allowed Dandelion to leave. Suspecting he would be followed, he goes full Kronk from the Emperor's New Groove and dips and dodges and weaves through the streets of Oxenford, and eventually makes his way back to Geralt, who we learn is now in Oxenford. Dandelion crawls through a window and finds Geralt and Shani engaged in team building exercises. Once the two become decent, Dandelion barely even gets time to explain the situation before an owl enters the room. This, as you may have guessed, was in fact Philippa. Philippa was one of the few mages with the talent in polymorphism, which allowed her to follow Dandelion with ease. Philippa is surprisingly understanding and essentially just warns Geralt about the potential danger Ciri is in. Geralt asks her why everyone is so interested in Ciri, and who Rhys is, and what he wants with Ciri. Philippa, unfortunately, doesn't have the answers that Geralt seeks. But Shani breaks the silence and claims not only does she know who he is, she also knows where he is. But, before we're given any more information, the chapter ends. Starting off chapter 6, we visit King Vizimir. He has assembled the group of the Northern Realms leaders, including King Foltest, King Henslet, Mev, Queen of Lyria, and Demowend, ruler of Aedirn. Now, this chapter, as you can imagine, is quite in-depth about politics, but just one more time, I'll go over it separately. To summarize, they plan 3 major things. They have to wipe out the Scoia'tael, retake Cintra from Nilfgaard, and they all want Ciri dead as a preemptive way to avoid Nilfgaard getting a hold of her and using her royal blood to legally rule over the city, giving them no claim to it in the future. Also, I'm not really sure why I didn't say this sooner, but just in case you didn't know, Ciri is actually of royal blood because her parents and grandparents ruled over Cintra. After their meeting, we're propelled forward in time to Emperor Mir, ruler of Nilfgaard, describing the meeting to one of his marshals named Cohurin, his man ruling over Cintra. Amir's knowledge about the meeting between the Northern Realms leaders calls him to accelerate his plans, giving orders to have Rhys stop wasting his time and kill Geralt, revealing that Rhys is actually in direct service of Nilfgaard. Emir then summons a man simply referred to as a knight in black armor, and informs him that is being given a second chance, and another mistake would cost him his life. He then demands the full attention of the 2 men present, as he is about to give them orders that are very important. But before we learn what they are, we transition back to Ciri. She'd been dreaming of Geralt, the knight in black from Cintra, and Yennefer. Yen was at her side, comforting her through her nightmares. So we know that Geralt's letter to Yen must have led her to the temple where Ciri was. But we'll hear plenty from the 2 of them later. We transition back to Geralt, Dandelion, Philippa, and Shani. They're getting completely soaked by the rain and traveling to the port in Oxenfurt to visit an old man which Shani knew had connections to Rhys. They kind of spend a good deal of time trying to get the information from the old man, but it's ultimately fruitless, considering Rhys at this time finds his way to Geralt. But not before hiring 4 professional killers. It goes into good detail about their names and who they are, but it's a little bit irrelevant because, as you can imagine, though faced with 4 professional killers, Geralt slaughters them. Fueled by potions and anger because of a smart remark Rhys makes about Yennefer, Geralt slaughters the 4 killers with such ferocity that it actually causes Rhys to run in terror. Screaming into the air for help, a portal actually appears before Rhys, but Geralt is not about to let him get away. Amidst all the fighting and chaos, we're actually given a seemingly irrelevant conversation with the Council of Wizards. They share their knowledge that they too are aware of the secret meeting that the leaders of the Northern Realms had had. However, they just planned to go along with it, even though they weren't included in the meeting in the first place. Now, back to the rainy evening in Oxenfurt. The leader of the 4 killers hired by Rhys lay bleeding in the mud, his guts exposed to the rain. Philippa comforts his pain with a spell, and then he tells her their connection to Rhys, and Philippa eases his passing. We don't hear anything that he tells Philippa, unfortunately, but we rejoin Geralt, and he's caught up to Rhys before he's made it to the portal. Now, once Geralt catches up to Rhys, he puts his swords away, and to be frank, he beats the ever-living out of Rhys. While trying to get the name of his master, a surge of magic seeps through the portal, giving Rhys Lady Deathstrike-like fingers, and he plunges them into Geralt. He jumps back, and before he can even re-engage, Philippa completely immobilizes Geralt with a spell, allowing Rhys to limp his way through the portal. Philippa had no intention to explain herself to Geralt, and he passes out from blood loss in the rain. And unfortunately, that's the last we'll see of him for the novel. Our eighth and final chapter focuses exclusively on Yennefer and Ciri. It starts off with Ciri being teased by some of the other girls that go to the temple with her, telling us that she's kind of an outcast there. Yennefer calls Ciri to her side, and their conversation stirs Ciri to remember how they first met when Yen first arrived at the temple. Ciri didn't like Yennefer at first, but after a good while of mentorship, they eventually became quite close. Yennefer explains how magic works to Ciri, and forgive me if I'm butchering this a little bit, but basically what she tells her is that magic is energy in the air, and mages simply have the ability to tap into it and use it. That's kind of a bare bones explanation, but much like with the politics, I can do that separately. The only thing that I could think to mention that's relevant about the chapter is that Yennefer trains Ciri for quite a while before they leave, to the point that Ciri actually gets a fairly decent understanding of magic. Yen also asks a few questions that we ourselves as the readers would have, like how Ciri escaped Sintra, but she actually doesn't remember that. And all in all, nothing all that crazy happens. By the end, Ciri and Yennefer leave the temple, hooded and hidden. Where they're going, we don't know yet. Alright guys, that'll be it for Blood of Elves. I'll be sure to do the other novels, as well as other videos regarding certain lore. But till then, take care.